Hello and welcome to our webinar this morning. Well, this morning for some of us at least, I'm in the Los Angeles area. We'll be talking about an online permit application solution that we built in collaboration with the state of Washington Department of Ecology using the Microsoft Power Platform. So if that's what you're here to see and hear about, then you're in the right place. While we wait for some people to come in, I'll just introduce myself. I'll introduce the company and then we'll do introductions in a minute. But one of the things that might occur as odd for some people, if you know me, you may know me from a company called Share Squared. Share Squared, I started the company in 2005, and we had a focus on SharePoint, Microsoft 365, and Dynamics. And in January of this year, we were acquired by AgreeYa Solutions. So that's why we've got the AgreeYa shirts on and the AgreeYa logo on the slides. And it's been a great collaboration. And the entire Share Squared team came over. We're still operating as Share Squared and AgreeYa family company. And same people. In fact, those of you who may be customers, we typically have a lot of MESAC customers on these things will recognize Jim Duncan. He was a chief architect for Share Squared and was there for 18 years. So same crew under a different emblem, but a much larger company, about 2,600 employees in 6 countries. AgreeYa has been around for 25 years. So and a much broader offering. I'm the EVP of the Microsoft 365 division, so that's my focus area, but AgreeYa does people placement and Azure infrastructure and custom development and non-Microsoft products like UiPath and things like that. So very broad set of offerings. And that's pretty much all you're going to hear about the company stuff. The rest of it is going to be talking about this particular project and seeing demos of the technology. Next slide, please, Jim. Okay, so I am joined today by Chelsea Jefferson. She was the lead on the project that we did with Washington. So I'm going to say this and then I'm going to shorten it. So it's the Washington State Department of Ecology. We call them ECY or Ecology. So that's what we're using those synonymously. So the interesting thing about Chelsea is, first of all, her background is she's a hydrogeologist. So she's not a computer science major or something like that. And she worked very closely with Jim Duncan, who's our chief architect and is a Microsoft certified master on this solution. And she has been outstanding in terms of picking up the technology. So I think it speaks to both Chelsea's brilliance, but also the platform is a no-code, low-code platform. So we're proving out not only the technology, but we're proving out the possibility of citizen development, that kind of thing. If you've heard that term before. And then I'm David Kruglov. I'm EVP of the Microsoft 365 division at AgreeYa. So the intention for the webinar is not to sell you anything, although we would love to have engagement afterward. And we are going to provide a recording of the webinar, the slide deck, and some other resources that I'll mention at the end of the webinar. And we'd love to hear from you. We may include a survey about the material and kind of how you're using the Power Platform. We were going to do that today, but we didn't want to run out of time. We want to reserve some time at the end for QA. So the idea is really to teach you, share what we know, and be a collaboration. So we're not saying we're smarter or better. Sometimes we get some very technical people and they have different perspectives, or maybe we say something that's not exactly right. That's fine too. And we can have that kind of engagement. You all can chat with us and ask questions through Zoom. We want to support a community of people who are looking to improve business processes. We love technology. That, Jim and me, that's our whole lives have been dedicated to this thing. We very much like to share what we know and see other organizations win with technology. We want to answer your questions and we want you to be in action. So if you are sitting back on, oh, we could never do this, or this would cost too much, or we don't have the licensing, or whatever those basket of concerns are for you, reach out. You'll have my email address at the end. And no cost discussion, just to talk about what might be in the way of you moving forward. And ultimately, we want to be a service to you. Okay, so the agenda today is to review the business use case. That's what Chelsea is going to do for us, provide an overview, kind of the initial state, paper forms and things to do permit applications, and then the desired state, sort of kind of the requirements or what we were asked to do. This was a competitive solicitation, an RFP that we won, but Ecology already knew what they wanted to do and knew what platform they wanted to use, and we'll talk about why. And then the outcomes that were achieved with the solution. I will then do an overview of the Power Platform, Power Pages, and the Dataverse. And then Jim will do demonstrations of the actual application, which is two main parts. One is the public-facing part where website visitors fill out an application. And then there's the internal Dataverse and what's called a model-driven app that internal Ecology staff use to process applications. Okay, Chelsea, take it over.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Chelsea Jefferson. Thank you, David, for introducing me. With Ecology, and I'm going to talk about a project where we moved our paper-based applications to Power Platform, both an external application process for our customers and an internal application review. So the applications are for water rights, and those are managed by the state. I'm guessing nobody on this call, other than me and now Jim, are familiar with water rights, but many of the goods and services we all rely on have water rights that support them, including agriculture, municipal water supply, power generation, manufacturing. And in the Western United States, water rights, maybe we're all familiar with this, it's a competitive atmosphere. There's more demand than available water. And so as what we've required from our applicants has become more complex to kind of because our decisions are more complex, our business process has not changed. So still a paper-based application, but the application has gotten much longer. It is 11 pages. You have to fill it out, sign it, mail it in with a check or money order. And then there's not always consistent communication between Ecology and the applicants as far as the status of your application. And that, of course, leads to frustration on the applicant's end. And then on our end, sort of an inconsistent and ultimately unnecessary customer workload. So Ecology and my program, Water Resources, we went to the state and we asked for money to rethink our permitting business process and create an online application. And we knew we wanted to use Power Platform because we needed to show results in 1 year based on the funding that we received from the state. And we did not think that we could accomplish it with traditional development. Our development in-house has been historically totally custom with .NET, and it can take a very long time. And we really believed that even though we hadn't used Power Platform before, that the trade-offs from custom development to a no-code, low-code solution that were worth it, and that we would ultimately get what we needed. We also were encouraged to use Power Platform because the agency and the state overall were starting to invest in Power Platform for exactly the reasons that I mentioned before. Just custom development can take so long. Maybe some of you on the call are familiar with that. And also because IT in my agency is fragmented, we don't always have access to really specialized IT services like security is a great example. And so having that built in with Power Platform means we don't have to really think about it. And that's a big win for us. So I'll talk a little bit more about our initial state. As I mentioned, we had paper applications. They were very long, they're very complex. That led to submission errors that then begins a dialogue between us and the customer trying to get the correct information. Like I mentioned, they're mailed in and with a check or money order, and the payment is tracked separately. And what's not on this slide, but was a point of frustration for us, is that because our fee schedule is somewhat complex, applicants only sent in the initial application fee, and then we calculated a separate fee based on their request, like how much water they were requesting. And so that's just another part of that back and forth. And then those paper applications, they were all hand keyed into our system of record, which is a source of errors and inconsistency, and of course, inefficient. So what did we want? We wanted a public-facing app where applicants could come. They could be authenticated with an account. They would fill out, save, and come back to their application. Could upload supporting documents. For example, we require that a map of the project location and where the water will be diverted from, that's included with the application. They can pay the total calculated fee online and electronically sign and submit. And then the dashboard that our staff use to review the applications will show, how many applications are pending review, what the status is. So are they in review or have they just been received? And who has been assigned to the application? And that's all through a business process flow that I think Jim is going to demonstrate. And that communication piece that I mentioned before, that is now automated. So when we receive the application, we say, "Hey, thank you, we received your application." We'll be in touch within, I think we say 30 days. And then when we accept the application, another automated communication goes out, say, "Hey, we've accepted your application. Here's an artifact for your records," which is something that, of course, you can't do when you just have a paper application. And we reference the application number and where they can go to view the application and the status. And then big win for our admin staff. The information on the online application is automatically transferred to our system of record, so no need for manual data entry. And really, I just described the desired state, and that's what we got. It was such a pleasure to work with Jim and Share Squared. I learned a lot about Power Platform. I'm still learning, but we now have an automated process and things that maybe I didn't expect, or I didn't think would be as important, that now I'm realizing I really appreciate, are that data inputs can be validated, and we can provide in context support, like links out to mapping tools or to publications and documentation. And also, if somebody calls us and says, hey, I'm working on this online application and I don't understand what you need from me, our staff can go in, see the application in draft, real time, where the applicant is, and walk them through. And that's only happened once or twice, but it has been really helpful, because this is, of course, a new online applications is new for us, but for our customers, for applicants, it could be new for them as well, and we want them to feel supported. Also, and overall big picture, we're saving time with reduced sort of manual, or I don't know what you'd call it, just sort of customer service where we're being where people are reaching out to us, and it's not expected because they don't understand the status of their application. That has really not a problem for us anymore. And then I think, like I already said, we are on our way to self-sufficiency. We are managing this application. We are finding opportunities to improve, so small enhancements, and we are able to handle those ourselves. Jim's going to demo the solution, but there are some things that we want to add to it, and we're going to be working with Jim and Share Squared on those sort of larger enhancements as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Chelsea. I just wanted to highlight, one of the things that we learned about the process is that there's a lot of branching that happens, kind of, if you can imagine. The paper application doesn't obviously provide for this, but some of the parts of the application depend on answers further up in the application. So Jim did some pretty sophisticated work to make it so that the form is kind of dynamic when you're filling it out. It doesn't, and that alone cut down some of the issues, the questions and the errors and things, because people just didn't know if they answered something wrong, and then they started, it's like a tax return. It's not that bad, but you start filling out stuff you don't need to, or you're confused, and it's just so much better where the data is validated and you're led through almost like a wizard-like process to complete the application. So very, very different, obviously, than doing it on paper.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Beautiful. All right, Jim, let's move on to my part. So I'm going to do this quickly because I want to keep as much time as possible for the demos and some QA at the end. And again, if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask them. You can get this information online. That's what I did. I used Copilot in Edge, and then I cleaned it up and grabbed it. But Power Pages comes with a design studio. So if you've been a web developer, you've used other tools similar to what WordPress or Drupal, things like that have, where it's they call it WYSIWYG editor. That's what you see is what you get, mostly, not always, but allows you to kind of drag and drop and arrange components in the Power Page you're building. There are pre-built templates and themes. There you can configure your standard brand, colors and fonts, and different artifacts and things, so that each Power Page, it's sort of like componentizing the brand parts of it, so it's reusable. People always want to know, are the pages responsive? Meaning, do they limit the trips back to the server and handle the things client side when they can, so that the application, the user experience is a more responsive experience? It is. And also ADA compliance is in by default as well. So that's important. Obviously, it integrates with the Dataverse. That's what we're talking about today. But you don't have to do that. You could just have a Power Page, out by itself. I think the original thought was that for Microsoft was that it would be used for specific portals and applications like we're talking about today. We're using it more broadly for websites. And in fact, that note at the bottom is AgreeYa has a utility that can import websites to the Power Platform. So if you're interested in that, that's a whole other topic, but we can crawl a website from the root down and move the content into Power Pages and the Microsoft Dataverse where there's data-driven content. So a lot of capability there, a lot of connectivity to other databases and things like that. But a very, very capable platform. Also, in the Power Pages product, there's security and governance, so role-based access. So if you know the Microsoft technologies, you'll be very familiar with how it works. And that's one of the great things about it is the way it's implemented, it aligns with the way kind of everything works in the Microsoft ecosystem, from the role-based access and authentication, the way data is handled. So it's secure at rest, secure in transit. It's hosted as an Azure web app. If you have more questions about that, we can get into that offline. But that's just one of the data points. And it's managed in the Power Platform Admin Center, mobile friendly and accessible by default. So as long as you don't step on top of that, you're going to be able to have your users use tablets and phones and things like that. And it's ADA compliant. And there's a lot of learning path information on Microsoft Learning and developer tools like GitHub integration and Visual Studio extensions. So this is a big play for Microsoft. They haven't for years really had a public-facing website technology other than ASP.NET and ASP Classic before that. Some people use SharePoint 2019 public-facing. That's I don't know if that was a great idea, but that's also at end of life, so that's not a great. So this really is Microsoft's public-facing website technology, and Power Pages Studio for editing that information, and then the Dataverse for serving up data-driven content. Microsoft Dataverse on the back end, you're going to see all this, but you've essentially built something called a model-driven app. And that includes a forms designer, which you'll see, and you can add views, and there are built-in tables. So the Dataverse underlies all the Dynamics 365 products. So if you're familiar with Dynamics sales and marketing, supply chain management, financials, they use the Dataverse themselves. So that's one of the reasons we know Microsoft's very committed to this platform. We can leverage those tables, like there's contacts and accounts or organizations kind of table. And we can use those in our custom applications without impacting what's happening on the dynamic side because it's a different environment. But we can also add custom tables, and you'll see some of that. I mentioned the security and role-based access. Data integrity is enforced. There's a whole logic and validation component. Task management, which Jim will show a little bit on. And tight integration with the other Power Platform components. And in this case, we're not using everything, but you'll see Power Automate, Power Pages, and the Dataverse is the focus of this webinar. And then the AI pieces have been, injected into this as well and provided by Azure AI. Okay, now it's your turn, Jim. We did all right.
Thanks, David. All right. Yeah. So, today we're going to walk through the solution that we implemented. We're going to start from the Power Pages website, where people come to sign in, create their account, and create one or more applications for a water right. And then we'll dig in behind the scenes a little bit. We'll look at how an application is sort of orchestrated through this whole business process. Calls out to some workflows and Power Automate. We'll look at the app that staff use to look at the dashboard and dig into the details of all the applications. And we'll probably just mention the email templates. We might see the task management and the signature piece. So let's jump into that. Ooh, that's the wrong button. Okay, let's start from here. So first of all, everything that we're looking at today is in the development environment. We have more than one Power Platform environment that we use for the solution. We do everything in development environment with sample data. We can test everything. Nobody gets to see that but us. And then we promote the solution and the various components of the solution to the production environment, which is what users actually see, which has actual data in it. We're not going to look at the production solution today because there's actual data in there. So everything that we're going to see today is a little bit ahead of production in some ways, and all just sample data that doesn't really mean anything. But this is the landing page. This is what it looks like before a user has signed into the portal. Just some quick information here, and then the 6 different types of water right applications that will be available. Right now, I think only 3 of these are in production. The other 3 are even more complex than those, believe it or not. So those are the next ones that we're going to move on to. But we'll just pretend that I'm going to apply for a new water right. I get some information here, some links to some external sources with more information, and I click apply. Now, an application has to be tied to a specific person. So in this particular case, our authentication mechanism is connected to an authentication provider hosted by the whole state. So everyone that interacts with a state of Washington website in some way that requires them to be authenticated, across the board, those all use the same authentication mechanism. Now, Power Pages does support third-party authentication mechanisms or first-party like this, something custom. It also supports using Microsoft accounts, Facebook accounts, Gmail. There's a lot of different ways that you can enable your users to sign in. This one is custom. This one is developed and hosted and managed by the state. And the Department of Ecology has we've configured the portal to tie into that authentication mechanism to identify who our users are. So now when I'm signed in, again, this is, development environment, made up information, but now the portal knows who I am. So it shows my name up here. I've got more options than I had before. And I land on my portal or on my profile just to, verify that all my information is correct. And then I could click next and I begin the application process. So this is what's called a multi-step form in Power Pages. We'll look at the back end of how this is designed and configured in a minute, but this is the first step. So I'm creating a new application and I'm specifying whether I'm applying for myself or on behalf of my organization or on behalf of another individual. I still can edit my profile if I want to. I'm just going to leave this for myself and click Create Application. And immediately back in the staff app, if I refresh this dashboard, we should see that new application. Actually, do we show drafts here? I don't remember, Chelsea. There is this is the application that the staff use. And if we look at draft applications, I've got the one that I just created. So just started from scratch. I haven't filled out any other data, but we can see that it's already got an application number. It's tied to who I am and the type of application that I created. So we'll come back to this and see how this record in the Dataverse gets updated as I step through the form. So the next step of the form asks me who the primary contact is. I can select any of my contacts that I have stored in the portal. I can even add additional contacts if I've got them stored in the portal. So let me just grab additional contact 3. And, this is another person that needs to be involved in this application process. And in this particular case, we'll say that additional contact 3 is a consultant. So we will save that and we'll hit next, and then we'll go back to the record and refresh it. Okay, well, I haven't gotten far enough to be able to refresh, so let me just refresh the whole page. And if we dig in, we'll see as we go that more information gets filled in. But this is the business process flow that this whole thing is going to. The idea that staff have access to the application even while the user is still filling it out makes it possible for staff to assist in that process if they need to. So if I get, 5 steps into this application and I kind of get stuck and I need to reach out, all the work that I've done so far is available to staff already, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to save some time here by just clicking through. So here's an example of that branching sort of logic. Just one example of many. The project duration and the type of duration for the project determines an extra question that needs to be asked in some cases. So if I say that this is just for a short-term or temporary permit, I get additional questions here. Like if I'm applying for a drought authorization, and if that's true, then I also have to provide that information. I have to select a from date and a to date. Just for simplicity, we'll go back to no here. Oops, sorry, that's not the one I meant. We'll go back to long term. I'll say that I'm applying for right to use groundwater, and I'll just copy some text in here for my address and hit next. So now we're on step 2 of the process, but if we go back to the application in the Dataverse, we'll see that we have more data here now. So the region is filled out, the source type, the duration. So again, the key point here is that the database that's powering both the application website where people are entering information and the application that staff are using internally, it's the same underlying database. So as soon as a change is made in one place, it's immediately available to the other in the other place. It's the same data. So a lot of information goes into these applications. Again, this is just an example of the complexity. You can maybe imagine what kind of things could go wrong if someone was doing this by paper and presented with every possible question instead of just the ones that pertain to what they're doing. So a lot of tables and subtables and other kinds of things. So very, very complex. Yeah. So I'm going to leave that one there where it is. I'm going to demonstrate that I can click on my applications and see all the applications that I'm currently working on that haven't already been fully approved and transferred. I can come right back into where I was. I can view the application. I have a list of my contacts so that I don't have to key in the same people for every application that I do. Perhaps I'm a consultant that assists in this process with multiple people, or I'm a member of an organization that needs to apply for many different types of water right. It's good to have all this information available to me in a reusable and repeatable fashion without having to rekey it in every time. So that's sort of what the well, not sort of, but that's what the application process looks like for the customers. So we'll jump back now to this water right application system, and this is what's called a model-driven app that was created for this process that's used by staff. The main landing point is this main dashboard. So across all the applications that are currently in some in process, I can come here and I will see all the applications that I have access to. We can see how many we have in each region, how many we have of each type, and their status. So, and it supports dynamic filtering. So this list over here is currently all of the applications that are in flight in some way. But let's say that I click on the central region. Now this list has been filtered, as has this chart and this chart over here. So this is a dynamic dashboard. Just really quick, I can focus in on that one application that's ready to submit, ready to transfer. So we're jumping here to an application that is much farther along in the process.
Jim, just real quick, as you're presenting the demo, can you try to point out the things that are kind of built-in features of the platform? So things like the business process flow, the dashboard, so that people are clear, again, this is no code, low code. So there's very little code, if any, in this, but
Good point.
I want people to get that some of these components you can just add to your solution and configure them, obviously. And there's a little expertise involved in that, but we didn't create the business process flow or the dashboards. You can do that with Power BI. You can do more dashboards, but just if you could point those out, that'd be great.
Yeah. So almost all of this is configuration. There is a little bit of JavaScript code that hides and shows certain tabs based on the type of application, but most of this is just configuring the features of the platform. And we'll dig into the solution itself and how it was put together in a minute. But yeah, this is the general look and feel of any model-driven app in the Power Platform. The Dynamics 365 apps have the same kind of layout and look and feel, and it's really just the fields and the data that might be different based on the scenario. So this business process flow here is one example of a built-in type of component that we just need to configure, tell it what the stages are, and for each stage, what pieces of information are necessary for each stage. We can run flows here, like generating a document that has all of the application data in it. So we don't start from paper now, but we might finish with paper if we decide, if the customer gets the PDF of their application and decides to print it out, now we have paper involved. Again, the application goes through this full process. Eventually, it gets transferred into the system of record, which assigns an ID and a document number that gets stored back into here so that the two are linked together. And then eventually, over time, things get archived when the whole process is complete. So that's the business process flow. This is the form. This is one of the forms for an application. This is the tabbed form, where each piece or collection of additional information is on a separate tab. You can just get an idea for how complex these applications are just by looking at this one that's, again, just in development and testing. So not real data, but representative of real data. Yeah. But that's just one form. That's the tabbed form. Some staff prefer a long form. Rather than just clicking from tab to tab, they would rather just scroll through all of that information in one long form. So highly configurable. even down to which forms are available to which users based on their security role. So that's the list of applications and the form for a specific application. We have a link here that goes out to another website that has more information for the people filling out the forms. It stands as a knowledge base for staff to refer to if they need to. But staff can also see all of the organizations that they have permission to see that have been added by customers, all of the individual people that are submitting applications, all of the contacts that have been created to go with those applications, and then which teams within the within the department are notified of certain things. So if we go back to my application example, I believe I selected the Eastern region for my application. So this represents a team of people that has an email address that all get notified for any applications in that region when they're submitted, if the customer retracts their application. So a little bit of configuration work can be done by staff as well. And then, like we saw, there's a lot of sort of back-end selection data, like the types of purposes, the types of devices like wells and pumps, source types like lakes, rivers, streams. So all of that underlying data management that supports the application process is configurable by the correct staff within this same model-driven app. So that's again, that's the application that staff use to manage all the applications that go through this process and all the data that supports them. And next, we're going to move on to how this came about, how this is represented from a developer's standpoint. And again, almost all of this is configuration. So when I say developer, I mean a low code, no code developer. I'm not writing code to do any of this. I'm configuring things. So this is what's called a solution. And this contains all the different pieces that come together to customize the environment for this particular solution that we've implemented. This is called the Water Rights Application System. These are just some of the things that are included in the solution, including the custom styling for the website. If we dig in here a little bit, we can see all of the objects that are included in this solution. Again, this is the sort of developer canvas that we're looking at here. This particular solution has 548 distinct components that are all brought together to make this thing work. We've got the one app that we looked at. That's represented here. If I click on it, that takes me into the app editing experience. And in the app editing experience is where I set up like the navigation. But what's cool is the application, as I'm configuring it, is displayed live right here. So if I were to add another dashboard to this list over here, it would immediately show up in here. So this is a running instance of the app that knows it's in development mode.
Jim, quick time check. It's 10:44.
Okay.
And there's also a question about can this app send email notifications to applicants? So that's one of the things on your list to show. So you might maybe do that soon. And then we're gonna, try to leave a little time for QA. But you're doing well. Carry on.
Yeah. So again, among all the things included in this solution, when it comes to automation, and specifically the one that David just mentioned, we use Power Automate to do that. These are all the flows, Power Automate flows that are included in this solution. This is one of those flows. This is the one that notifies the team that an application has been submitted or withdrawn. And it just, it connects to the Dataverse. It gets details about the application. It checks the preferred language of the submitter. and then it gathers some more data, and then finally it sends a notification when the application is submitted, a different notification when the application is withdrawn. But yeah, we automatically notify the submitter when their application is returned. If we need them to make a change, staff can just change a status, and this flow automatically sees that and sends the submitter an email with whatever comments the reviewer of the application has put in. So,
and Jim, these are some of the emails are driven by templates too. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, we could go much longer and much deeper if we need to. I don't think that we do. Just to give you some idea of what Chelsea's experience is like making changes. This is the design studio that David mentioned. So this is where the actual Power Pages site and its pages can be modified. This is the styling area that was mentioned. So all of these themes are available. We're using one of the built-in themes with our own custom styling and branding applied to it. We've got a data workspace that shows us all the Dataverse tables that we're working with. We've got a security section. We've got a lot of stuff going on here. And then finally, this is the definition of that multi-step form. So if we look here, just to give you some idea, these are all of the steps that are involved in that application process, but many of them are just conditions. So we check for the value of a field, and based on the value of that field, we might jump to a different step or skip a whole section. So not just dynamic condition-based information that we're asking for in a single step, but we might skip entire steps based on the answers to previous questions. So very, very capable, very flexible. It might seem a little complex and overwhelming, but again, Chelsea, brand new to this platform, and is already at a point where she can get what she wants to get done pretty much on her own. And we just meet for an hour a week if we need to, if there's anything that she or her team are stuck on. But they kind of own this solution now, and they're taking it forward and enabling the additional application types and generating documents from templates, and it's pretty amazing.
Jim, we've got a couple of questions. Is there any payment collection involved in Power Pages front end? What is the licensing requirement? It's two different questions. So something about the payment processing, we did something specific because Washington State has their own methodology for processing payments, but maybe you can talk about other options if you're aware of them, connectors or things like that. And then also the second question from the same person is, what is the licensing requirements for both Power Pages and says backend Power App users, but the Dataverse, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, great.
Power payments and licensing. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to payment, there is at least one, I can't recall the name right now, but there is at least one payment processing system that's sort of ready and kind of pre-integrated for Power Pages. So if that's your vendor of choice, you're good to go. In this particular one, ECY already, I think maybe the whole state already has a payment processing vendor and an internal application portal that they built for that integrates with the vendor. And so we integrated with that. So our particular payment processing is all kind of custom, leveraging a third-party payment gateway or an internal payment gateway to a third-party payment processing platform. But there is at least one. Is it Squarespace? I don't remember what it is. But there is at least one sort of easy to implement payment system with Power Pages. But again, it's a platform, it's a tool set. So as long as your payment gateway and vendor of choice has some sort of API to be able to interact with them programmatically, we can get that implemented. Now, when it comes to licensing, the developer working in a development environment needs no additional licensing. So Microsoft has a specific developer plan for the Power Platform that enables all the premium features and everything as if you had bought them. So your developers don't really need any extra licensing at all, including if they want to use premium connectors that would usually require a license. Internal staff need either a per user or a per app license for the Power Platform beyond the one that comes with Microsoft 365 licensing. So Microsoft 365 licensing includes licensing to use the other kind of app you can create in the Power Platform, what's called a Canvas app. Don't need an extra license or anything to run those. But these are model-driven apps that are built on top of the Dataverse. So that does require an extra license for either, again, per user, which lets a per user license will let a single user access and run any number of model-driven Dataverse apps, or per app. So you can get a license, it costs a little bit more, but any number of users can use that app in any of its components. And the sweet spot is about 5 apps. So if you're going to do 5 of these and you've got a large number of users that are going to be using them, it's probably better to go with per user than per app. But that's what it's like for your internal staff in terms of licensing. For
Jim,
Power,
I'm sorry, you have another question coming up. So when you're ready.
for Power Pages, Power Pages licensing is a little bit different. You can do pay as you go. You can do capacity based on the number of people that are going to be signing in to your website in a month, or the number of people that are going to be anonymously accessing your Power Pages website in a month. And that's, potentially a whole additional webinar on licensing that would be necessary to really get into it. What's the next question, David? GCC? Is it that one?
Yeah, I think we covered licensing pretty well. And the other, just side note about that, you always got to double check with your Microsoft licensing provider because this changes all the time. The trend has been that the cost is coming down, and there are different cost models. Jim mentioned, app-based or user-based. So, one of the things we do with customers is work with them to choose the appropriate licensing and also make sure they're not overspending on licensing because, again, you get certain licensing with other products. So, that's something we can sort out with you on a one-on-one basis, sort of. Yeah, the next question is really about whether or not the technology you showed is available in GCC tenants.
Yeah, this is a GCC tenant. So everything that we've looked at today works totally fine for GCC, including Power Pages. Microsoft does not limit this functionality much. They're just a little bit behind when it comes to GCC. But we've seen nothing here today that isn't already running in a GCC tenant, fully licensed, fully supported by Microsoft. But good question.
I'm sorry, we've got about 6 minutes. Any other questions? Or go ahead and then finish that thought, Jim.
I was just going to say some of the newer stuff lags behind, like AI. Yeah. So one thing that ECY is considering for the future, once it's available and a little more common, is perhaps integrating an agent of some sort, a chat or a co-pilot of some sort, into this process that can answer questions for the applicant in a chat. But again, GCC government tenants are a little bit behind on that kind of stuff, usually.
Yeah, one example is Microsoft Fabric, which is it's kind of a data integration, data warehouse and data lakes, data transformation. That's a product that is, I think, one of the greatest products I've seen in a long time. Not yet available in GCC, but we have some intel on that. So if you're looking at using Fabric, reach out to me. Jim, you may want to go back to the slide deck and just have my contact info. Oh, let's pause here for a second. So some resources. The registration page isn't up yet, but we are doing an AI readiness webinar, and you probably heard a lot about Copilot and AI readiness. And in our case, we're giving very specific game plan or playbook for how we see this. And it kind of gets into designing and deploying an enterprise taxonomy, migrating your content from on-prem SharePoint file shares or legacy ECM systems. So if you're using a OpenText or a Laserfish or Highland OnBase or Documentum, those kinds of applications, we help customers move the content into the cloud, and particularly the Microsoft Cloud. Some ShareGate, we're doing the webinar with ShareGate, so they have some AI readiness reports and things in their product. How to configure auto classification features, which is really about identifying documents as their business purpose. So it's not just a PDF in SharePoint, it's an invoice, a contract, policy, procedure, that kind of thing. Our enterprise taxonomy solution accelerator comes with 70 predefined content types. We're not going to get into that today, but they are the nice thing is if you haven't addressed the taxonomy, which supports search, workflow, and records management, that's something we have an accelerator for. And then we'll talk about designing and deploying Microsoft Purview, records management, sensitivity labels, and data loss prevention features. We also have a case study about this particular solution. This deck will go out. That's a link to it, so you have the link there. And then there's a white paper that Jim generated using a Copilot agent called Researcher. And it's pretty amazing. It takes him about 20 minutes to do these and edit them and get them ready. So we pointed to that, and I think we're going to have another one about how you can, I'm sorry, that is the one, replacing Microsoft Access and legacy client server apps with the Dataverse. So if you know about Microsoft Access, it's not really enterprise grade. It's been used a lot, very functional. Or if you've got a lot of legacy client server apps, meaning, traditional kind of Oracle or SQL backend, maybe an ASP.NET front end or some middleware, or it could be a desktop app in Visual Basic or whatever. The Dataverse in this Power Platform represent an opportunity to replace those older applications with all the security and fault tolerance and 4 nines of uptime and all the things that the platform provides, and it's hosted by Microsoft. So you're not dealing with upgrades and things like that. So that's what that white paper would be about. Next slide, please, Jim. This is the final closing slide. So reach out to me. I don't charge for my time. I want it to be used judiciously, but I used to be a developer. I mentioned that I founded Share Squared in 2005, and AgreeYa is 5 years older than that. And so, Jim and I and our team have a lot of experience with this stuff. So if you want to just brainstorm about something, see if what you saw today might be a fit for an application you're working on, just share a business problem. We don't know what to do with this. Does Microsoft have anything, or even beyond Microsoft now with AgreeYa as a much broader offering? Schedule a demo. Maybe you want a one-on-one demo for the rest of your team for some of this stuff, or looking at Power Pages Studio in depth or something. Get an estimate for a project, proof of concepts. If you have an RFP coming up, but you haven't released it yet, and you want some samples, the Washington Ecology one was very well written. So that might be one of the examples if your target is Power Pages and the Dataverse or the Power Platform. But if it's something like SharePoint or anything, and you just want to get some input before the RFP is released, we do a lot of RFPs, so I can give you some samples. And then I also have a deck of a bunch of other Power Platform projects that we've delivered for customers. Any other? Yes, the information will be shared. So both the recording, the presentation, and the links to those artifacts I just mentioned. Any other questions before we close? All right, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got some valuable information. And again, reach out to me. I have my AgreeYa email address. If you have my Share Squared one, that still works. We're still kind of got a foot in both doors, but moving towards being all up AgreeYa. But yeah, reach out if you need any help or have any questions. And with that, have a great day. Hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.